we're connecting and we are good to go. So hello to Robby, to Donna, to Ryan, and to, actually, you know what? Let's just hang on a moment. We'll wait till a couple of people join.
Yeah, it says there's only 5 viewers.
Yeah. We'll just give it, and that's us and William and Hillary. So we'll just hang on a second. I see Juanita's here. Nice to see you, Juanita. All right, well, here we go. We're going to we'll get started with a Q&A, live question and answer session here with Ryan, Juanita, Robby, and Donna. Thank you, people, for joining in, all of you, for your presentations. Very thought-provoking, very interesting. And each of you, although there was a very different story, and each of you come to this conversation from a different perspective, a whole lot of similarities. So thank you for sharing your personal journeys with what's going on. I wanted to ask a question, and earlier today we heard from Johans out of Scandinavia talking about the coexistence villages. All ages, all abilities living together, whether that's seniors, people living with diversabilities, childcare. What is it? I wouldn't mind. Tell me about what's your take on something like that. Does that appeal to you as either a parent or sibling, or in Ryan's case as a organizational provider? How does that resonate with you? Those coexistence villages.
Is that me?
Sure, you can start, Robby. You start, Robby, and then we'll go to Donna, and then Juanita.
Johannes is a partner of ours, and he's absolutely amazing. I think the coexistence villages and having everybody living as a community is wonderful and a newer concept. I was reading a paper over the weekend on how you should take out kind of the label of disability or diversability and just consider their needs as a regular human and how to integrate them in society. And so I think that concept of having all ages together is important and something we should consider going forward.
Donna, what do you think?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to listen in to the speech that you're referencing, but I am familiar with the intentional communities that are built around these ideas. I guess I'm of two minds with this concept. I'm wondering if we can't achieve the same goals in the communities that we have, rather than have to build a new intentional communities. I'm wondering if we can't make collective decisions to organize ourselves through, say, asset-based community development principles, and the value of intergenerational relationships, and build those into where we live today.
Interesting, very interesting. Well,
I would say
Ryan,
I fully agree as well. I mean, as I mentioned in our conversation earlier, with us being care partners, children are care partners, we are care partners. The greatest resource that we have is in our community. So we need to utilize that resource. And as Donna said, we don't need to, in my opinion, necessarily build a community within a community. We should be a part of, not apart from. So that's what I think we're all trying to achieve, is to ensure that our community is accessible and available for any individual, regardless of ability.
Juanita?
I agree with Ryan. My son's entire life I've spent being inclusive and making sure that he was inclusive in everything, public school, public high school, and not really separating him from anything. And so, I don't want to see in the future communities that are based on silos, and then he's not getting he's not getting the complete effect of living a full life. Life has challenges, life has ups and downs, and screams and laughters. And so that's what I want for him.
Really interesting. I think it would be next. Our next mission should be to have a panel between the four of you and our construction and building panel that was earlier today, and that could be a really robust conversation. So looking to the future. So I'm going to ask you about what scares you, but I'm also going to come back to what gives you hope for the future. So it's not just So if you think of your son or your brother or Ryan, the people that you get to be with in your daily travels, what scares you about the future for when these individuals maybe become 50, 60, 70, 80 years old? What scares you about that? Donna, do you maybe want to start us off?
Sure. Well, to be honest, I am worried that people with diverse abilities are not going to be around in the future. I've personally felt very threatened by a lot of the events that have taken place during the pandemic. We've just seen Bill C7 go through the Canadian Parliament that creates a different stream for medical assistance in dying for people with disabilities who are not at the end of their life. And that putting that together with what it took to get people with diverse abilities prioritized for COVID vaccine, that was like a really big fight and so I feel like the pandemic has offered some great opportunities for us, but also I don't think I've ever felt that people with diverse abilities, older people and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, have been as threatened existentially as they are today.
Very insightful. Juanita, what scares you about the future for your son?
Just again, society's take on what's going on with him. When you look at Arjun, he looks like a normal man. And this morning I saw him; he looked like a normal, unshaved teenager. But then, if he does get into a problem, or if he does have an escalation on a bus or anywhere, nobody else knows that it's just an escalation. People get mad, and that's what happens when he has an escalation. Now he is controlling it quite a bit in the last 5 years, exponentially. But I think for me, it's just the perception that people have about autism. And maybe I watch too much TV, but I know when I watch the news in America, people have an escalation and then, they're killed because the police officer doesn't know. And I just don't want that. That's my biggest fear.
Robby, how about you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first fear would be that nobody in our family is around for him and around to advocate for him because my brother Joey just relies on us so heavily. The second is, to what Juanita and Donna said, which is like, no one really cares that much unless you're involved in this area. Personally, I am taking a public speaking course and use this as an opportunity to speak about it to my class on Monday. And I spent the first 3 minutes talking about my brother and language that's used around autism and why the word diversability is so important, and framed it towards a housing problem and walked them through it. And someone criticized the presentation and said, "Why should I care? Why is this my problem?" And I said, I just spent the first 3 minutes talking about the personal impacts and all the language around it. And that is why you should care, because there's a whole community of people that are amazing. And I spoke about what makes him amazing, yet you still see it as a problem. And that type of language is still being used, and people are just concerned with themselves, and it's very sad. So, yeah. And you can see my voice get shaky because I burst out crying in the class, but it's very emotional and it's very upsetting. And I think there needs to be a lot more education around what makes these people diversable versus just disabled.
Exactly.
Wow, isn't that something? Ryan, quickly, what scares you for the future?
I think the time it takes for bureaucracy to make changes. I think a lot of times we want to make changes in government, and a lot of our supportive living environments and homes are licensed, which is fantastic. But with those licenses come a lot of tick boxes. And sometimes with the tick boxes, an individual living with diversability starts to lose that autonomy and that independence and what they truly want, because we as an organization may identify it as too risky, or maybe the government or other stakeholders would view it as a risky behavior, but at the end of the day, it's their human rights. So that's what scares me. How long is it going to take us to get to the point where we can be fully living together, right?
Yeah. Wow, we need to extend this conversation for an hour and get your insights, because this is really, really powerful and powerful stories that you're sharing and thoughts. So 45 seconds each is what we've got left here. What gives you hope for the future? When you think of Nicholas, Donna, what gives you hope for the future?
Well, first of all, his character, his optimistic nature, and his determination to live a good life. So his self-advocacy skills give me a lot of hope. But also what Ryan said about, feeling that systems are so stuck. I think, yeah, they are. But COVID has changed a lot of systems too, and shown us that they're not as stuck maybe as we think they are. So all of a sudden, COVID in some ways has been great for Nicholas, because all of a sudden everybody's living the same life he's always lived. And he's saying to everybody he knows, welcome to my world. And it's the great equalizer. So I'm interested to see what good stuff will stay after the pandemic. And so that gives me hope.
That's excellent, Donna. Robby, how about Joey? What gives you hope for Joey's future?
Yeah, I think, meeting you guys and finding other like-minded individuals who can band together and just innovate in this area and find new solutions and build communities. So that definitely gives me hope. Yeah.
And Juanita, for Arjun, what gives you hope?
I think I always used to say that I'm a bad mom, but I think my being a bad mom and being very strict and honest and to the point, like direct, minimum 3 words, do not do. I've actually taught him that skill. And, like I said, he will negotiate until he dies in the sword. Even if he's wrong, he doesn't care. He's just going to negotiate that point. And so he is a very strong boy, and he is very articulate. And that gives me hope, because I'm teaching him now that, if you have a stomach ache, say, I have a stomach ache. And so he's starting to get all that. And he has really, really excelled in the last 5 years. It's so amazing thinking back and looking back. And this exercise was really good for me, because it got me really thinking that. And so that he himself gives me hope that he is going to be all right.
Nice. Very nice. So Ryan, you get about 30, 45 seconds here.
All right.
Sure, you sit in what gives you hope for the future.
So one is this conversation today, this conference, this conversation, the fact that we're having it gives me hope. The other is I was actually cleaning up my desk for one of the first times in a long time, and found a piece of paper that we as an executive team at Eden Care made 10 years ago. And on it was our dream, our wish list. And there was 20 things on that list. And I remember when we made that list, we were laughing, like, yeah, right, none of this will happen. We've actually accomplished all 20 of those things in the last 10 years. So even though things now may seem insurmountable or impossible and we're not going to get there, if we keep having these conversations, we keep working together and continue to push, we will make it. So that gives me hope.
That's excellent. So that's good. We've heard some of the things that are not so promising for the future, but also it's nice to hear you all have hope and able to articulate in a way that is what we call doable hope. These are not impossible hopes. So to Juanita, Ryan, Robby, and Donna, thank you so much for making time to share your insights and your stories. It's really important. And I think to Robby's point, the fact that you've all come together, hopefully you continue to band together with others to continue to make change and influence the world in a way that's equal and fair and accessible for everyone. So with that, we'll tell our audience that we're going to close this session and we're going to move to the live session with Dr. Brian Goldman. So you can leave this room and we'll see you in the next room with Dr. Brian Goldman. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.